and we'll do a little masterclass of smartphone eye tracking. And since it's such a new topic for all of us still, I'm really excited to have Antje here, the expert and the founder of Oculid. And I'll start with a short introduction of iSquare, since we are kind of the hosts of this masterclass. We had the idea to do this within our conference series. The conference was actually yesterday in Berlin, and iSquare is a market research company based in Berlin, but doing very international market research with this techie side to it and with this psychological side. So, Antje, you're a psychologist too, aren't you?
Yes.
See? Yes. That's how it all fits now. I'm a psychologist myself at iSquare. A lot of us are, and we like to combine psychology and technology to offer the best research for our clients as a full service research provider. But sometimes we also just offer technology, and yeah, with the help of Oculate and Antje's team and colleagues, we can do that even better now, since we have been doing eye tracking for almost 20 years now. We're kind of experts in the field, but we always struggled to do eye tracking at home. So not in a lab, but actually in this kind of setting where the people are at home. And of course, we tried using the webcam, and that also works fine. But now with the latest, let's say, technology, smartphones and algorithms, Antje and the Oculid team is actually able to bring eye tracking on your own device. And we're really excited about that, and happy to give you a little intro today, and maybe even a demo. So Antje, I haven't really introduced you personally, but maybe you can do that even better a bit.
Yes, thank you, Philip. I'm very happy to be here at this masterclass as part of the MEMX conference. Maybe a short introduction, like I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Oculid. We are a fairly young startup, which was founded in 2018. And we, our main product is smartphone eye tracking. So we developed an algorithm that uses the selfie camera of smartphones to enable tracking where people look in various circumstances, contexts. And I will focus the first part of my short introduction here on where that actually makes sense, for what kind of use cases it can be used, and what insights you can gain from it. And then in the second part of the masterclass, we can also try that out. So if you have a smartphone at hand, you are very welcome to download the Oculate app from either the Play Store, the Google Play Store, or the App Store on Apple, because what is very special about our product, I would say, is that it works on basically any smartphone, as long as it's got a selfie camera. About the company, maybe briefly, we are founded by 3 scientists, I would say, myself and 2 colleagues from the Technical University of Berlin. And we are now roughly 15 people. We have focused a lot on development in the first years, and are now expanding, like growing our business team to go out and bring Oculid smartphone eye tracking to the world, if you want to call it that.
So it's actually like a coincidence that we are all based in Berlin, but you do this, of course, very internationally, and we as well. But it's nice to know that you're close, and actually the Technical University is also what connects us. But yeah, like you said, you can do this wherever you are. We haven't really asked where our participants are from. And please also use the chat and let us know what the background is, why you're interested in this. If it's all empty, the chat, I get that either the question didn't work, or all our interests are kind of the same. You started also with the UX idea, right, Antje?
Right. We started with the idea of doing UX research. We then ventured more into market research, mainly, not really because we think that eye tracking is more useful there, but it's just a better known concept in market research. And of course, it's easier to talk to people when they have a rough idea of what you are talking about than when you have to educate the market from scratch. But it's equally suitable for both contexts. So there's no reason why we focus more on market research other than like the very practical one.
We do basically segment our research teams in 3 fields as well: UX, shopper, and brand. And we also had a tough time to decide which team would be suited best to start like trials with you. And we started to cooperate like a year or 2 ago, and time flies, of course. And so I think all 3 fields are very different, and we all use eye tracking in these research processes, also very different, sometimes very qualitative, just 4 or 5 recordings are fine. And in the brand and media research, we talk about hundreds of recordings and respondents.
Right.
I see our conference room also dialed in, and the chairs are gone. And I just saw my colleague Tsunetomi-san, I think. Tsunetomi-san, is this you in the I2 Kunsthalle? Our Japanese colleague, he was also very interested because I don't think we have tried the smartphone eye tracking in Japan. You might have had, of course, Antje, but
we have, we have.
Very good. We'll be also looking to do that. And Lucas said he's doing a UX bootcamp in Berlin, and visual note-taking. Thanks for sharing. Also, Julia shared some, and you can write also questions in the chat, and we'll also spend some more time on that later on. But now I did interrupt you a bit, Antje. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought it. So I thought I'd start with a presentation to get into it straight away, into the use cases where smartphone eye tracking is beneficial. I have a small example. Is it starting? Yeah, a small example here of what it can look like when you have an individual recording of somebody's gaze on a particular site, for example. So it can be very interactive. Just to give you like a first very basic idea about it. And I usually stop a moment by the fact that we do smartphone eye tracking. So you, of course, can also do eye tracking on the laptop, but we have focused on smartphone applications for different reasons. One is definitely that smartphone use is picking up enormously in all sorts of areas, like app download is increasing enormously. The way people shop has changed over the past years. So for the first time, I think in 2021, smartphone shopping overtook online shopping on the desktop. And also, of course, there's the entire area of social media that people consume only on the smartphone. So we see that as a very important technology or device to venture into and to do market research, because that it is often neglected in this area. Like in market research, excuse me, Philip, when I say it, but often, not I2, but often it is run like very classically. A lot of the questionnaires exclusively focus on people who use desktop PCs. And of course, that's not the way that the world works these days. And you exclude like a whole bunch of users and also applications when you focus exclusively on desktops. So that's where we saw a great potential to go into this new device, new for eye tracking, definitely. And what we observe is, of course, that brands are competing for attention in what we almost call an attention war. Like everybody wants to position their product, their ad, as visible as possible. And then the question is, how can you measure that attention? That is what has sort of become our main focus. I've got some numbers here, which I find scary myself. I always tend to hope that it's a little less, but according to official statistics, Germans spend more than 3.5 hours on their phones these days. So that just underpins how important this has become. And it's even like a low figure in international comparisons. So depending on where you are from, it might even be more than that. Just as an intro to why this is our focus. And then we see ourselves as a company, though I don't want to talk too much about the company, but we see ourselves as the technological world market leader in measuring attention on smartphones. We are just about to publish a white paper on the quality of our eye tracking, which ranges in the vicinity of 0.8 centimeters deviation from the point that you actually want to measure. So it is very precise also, and that's important given the small screens that smartphones have, right? If you have like a deviation of 2-3 centimeters, you are almost outside the smartphone. So that we see that it's important to have the technology spot on. And then once you have that, you can focus on all sorts of different applications. We have customers that do studies in packaging, in social media, of course, and that's also where we work like a lot of with iSquare and their technology to integrate that into simulated feeds, for example. Could also be possible in packaging, of course, packaging in an e-commerce context. How is it perceived there? Digital advertising is a big market, of course, that is taking place more and more on the phone. Newsletters, we have recently run, for example, a test for DM, the German drugstore, and their users, more than 90% of their users open the newsletters on smartphones. And if you want to optimize that perceptually, obviously you should test it on the smartphone, and measuring attention there can be a big thing. Similar with the websites and apps, we are often more into the usability side of things. How should pathways be designed, filter functions? Those are the classical questions that tend to be asked. And yeah, before I show you anything practically about the eye tracking and how it works, I would like to go in and give you a couple of examples on what kind of data you could be expecting when testing one or more of these fields of application. Philip, I can't see the chat now, but I trust that when there's a question, you just read it and interrupt me, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's Anna and Sharon and Julia and Lucas kind of gave the background question why they're here and what they would be interested to learn. So when we take a break after your presentation, I'd be happy to summarize. Okay. But please go on. I think it's great when you kind of give us an overview of what people do with the eye tracking, and then we might as well do like one step back and also talk a little bit about why people should do it or when they should do it. And since we're the experts, sometimes we forget to introduce that part, of course. But please go ahead, and then we'll take the chat from there.
Yes, right. Cool. So I've brought a couple of different use cases, and and that's the next step. Before that, I'm going to say a couple more words about like what is the advantage of the technology to give you an idea. So we see a great advantage in the smartphone eye tracking being very scalable. So as we use the selfie camera, and I mentioned that in the first place, you can do it wherever you want. So you don't have to invite people into the lab, which opens up the number of participants that you can take part in your studies. So it can be from qual, indeed, individual recordings, 10 participants, to huge international quant studies with 1,000 people, for example, because you don't spend so much time on each of these people. It is easy to set up the test within minutes in our platform and then analyze the results there after having collected them for a couple of days. What we also see as a main advantage is that you can observe much more natural behavior than you could be doing in the lab, because people interact on their own phones and feel the comfort of their homes, where they would also normally be interacting with those products or ads. Yeah, and then it's flexible, customizable, accurate. Like, I think I did say a few words about that. Right, so I will be giving a couple of examples from the packaging area, social media, digital ad test, newsletters, and UX testing. So packaging is one of the applications that we see a lot for eye tracking in general. And then there's different ways of doing packaging tests on the smartphones. Of course, the most complex, but also most interesting might be that you test a package in the context of an e-commerce store, which is easily possible with the technology of iSquare, like simulated shops in which you can test packages. But you can also test packages, just use the convenience of the smartphone, that everybody has it and that you can recruit participants easily. I will be showing an example from that practically later, where we tested, for example, different packages next to each other to see like what of the packages from the same category got most attention when you display different packages, so you can sort of benchmark them against each other. In this example, we more looked at different features of the packaging. So this was a redesign, not benchmarking competitors against each other, but benchmarking a redesign from the same company. And then we looked into the attention on the specific features of the two packages. And in this case, what we found was that in the old Tropicana package, which is number A here, people tended to focus a lot more on the brand, while in the redesign version B, the individual features got more attention rather than the brand. So, and then of course it's a question on what you want to optimize for. If you're more interested in highlighting specific features of your product, or if you're more interested into raising brand awareness. So there's in this case, I would say, or at least in the study that we did, there's no right or wrong. It's just different attributes of the packaging that got more attention. And then you can obviously benchmark that with attitude that people have towards the packages, and then get a very complete picture about that package. When you also ask people about it, you complement sort of the implicit data that you get from the eye tracking with the more explicit data that people tell you about that specific case or that specific package. Yeah, and that's like where eye tracking is used a lot anyways in packaging. And you can either sort of choose to use the specific settings of an online shop or test the package in itself, which then, of course, there's no reason why you should be displaying one package in particular on the smartphone rather than the desktop. Here, it's just a convenience feature that people can do it in between while they use their smartphones anyway, so it's easy to reach people. In this specific example, I wouldn't say that it benefits from the smartphone setting in particular. Right. What is a lot more native, I would say, to the smartphone are all sorts of social media cases, be it ads in a social media feed or testing social media content in itself. In this example that I brought, we, together with the HTW, University of Applied Sciences in Berlin, looked at creative content on social media, on TikTok in this case. So this is a case study where different cooking influences were tested for their videos, and the researcher who did this study evaluated for each type of, or for each of the cooks that she researched, like what elements of the videos distracted attention, like what elements were it that led users to look elsewhere and to maybe even abandon a video. She identified a lot, I think it was 10 different things, and also that ranged from like chaos in the background to guidelines on whether you present what you've cooked first, or present that with a face or not with a face. So she came up with guidelines for, in particular, cooking on social media. And then, and this is the really nice thing about this study, she invited one cook to implement those guidelines. And while he has had a very steady audience before the implementations, the number of followers has increased by almost 40% afterwards. And it's even like more extremes for likes, comments, and shares of his videos. So there you could, it was sort of a live test of like video optimizing based on eye tracking. And you can see like that makes most sense to do on a smartphone, given that social media content is distributed via that source. Another example would be that I've already touched on briefly, testing of digital ads. For example, in the context of a news website. And in this case study, we looked at the difference in attention and viewability. So we looked at different ad formats in the context of a website and how much attention they got in comparison to how long they were displayed. And what we found here was that, at least in the studies we ran, there was no correlation between viewability, so how long an ad has been displayed, and how long people actually looked at it. It was rather on the contrary, that when ads were visible, for example, as a footer banner the entire time, it made it very easy for people to avoid those ads. So in those cases, the longer the ad was displayed, the less people looked at it. And so we established that, and also established like what formats were best suited to attract attention. And if attention was, like, and if there was a difference between different ad designs. So even for the best format of ads, you could destroy that by a bad creative, so to say, and then escape people's attention again. So it does make sense to test individual creations as well, to make sure that you don't like mess up with the advantages of the ad format that you have booked. One other example I already mentioned, we recently ran a study together with Kernwert, a community in which we tested a newsletter, and we, for example, established what the relationship was between image and text, like people concentrated almost evenly on images and text. We looked at how long people focused on coupons, so on discounts that they could be getting via that site, and evaluated I mean, it's sort of obvious that readers lose attention throughout the newsletter. Like the lower down your content is, the less likely it is to be looked at. But what we found was that emotional content, like images of products that appeal to people's emotions, that these could break that mechanism. So when you had those images, for example, of candles or of food towards the lower end of the newsletter, that worked as a way to attract people's attention, even though they had been looking at the newsletter for quite a while before, and even though they were spending less and less time on the individual sections. Right. And then there is like the entire field of UX, which is, I guess, what many of you are interested in. In UX, we see that one of the main advantages is that you can really build customer empathy. So you get the idea that you look over your customers' shoulders when you see them scrolling through the content and what focuses their attention individually. We have, for example, ran a case study here, which focused on ASOS and Zalando, and established how people navigated, in this case, through what was, how they filtered things for sustainability, like what gave them, what served as guidelines for people on where to, how to navigate the pages. And for that case, I mean, obviously, like one of the challenges when you go through websites is that people end up on totally different parts of the website. So we see this as particularly suitable for qualitative studies, where you go through the individual recordings. What I've shown before was very much focused on quant data. So you would look at like how long did people sustain the attention on a particular section of the image. So very quantitative by data that you can also compare A/B. In these cases, it's more like what categories do people look at, or what impression does it give me about like their navigation through the site. So here we have more research that actually looks at the individual recordings rather than the aggregated data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is the cases that I brought with me to show.
Thank you so much, Antje. And I think it's a great overview of the different possibilities for eye tracking, and also, the different needs that the researchers have. And I might just share my screen just for a second before we kind of jump into the next part. So when we at iSquare try to implement eye tracking, we do not do it without a reason, of course, and then also not in every study. And we try to always combine it with other methods, like you said, the implicit. So something maybe that could be called emotion or reaction time measurement, so, or also the behavior of people. So what people would not self-report, we like to give the attention, the perception, so everything that has to do with the system zero, how we call it, an extra field. This is where the eye tracking really comes in, because where the attention goes is so important for all of the further steps of information processing, obviously. And it's a very implicit or pre-conscious process. And we, of course, do not like to ask people as psychologists about the pre-conscious processes. So what did you look at? How often did you open your phone today? And all these questions don't make a lot of sense. And they also bring people in a difficult situation to self-report on something that they don't know. It's always difficult to say, actually, I have no idea. For people don't like to say that. And a very important part is, of course, also the explicit. So the questionnaires, the interviews. And with your tool, it's also really cool that we record the behavior on the phone. So you can imagine when somebody is on their phone, I just pulled up your page here right now and went to the product tab, and now I kind of scroll through this, and without eye tracking, you wouldn't really get an idea of what I'm looking at right now, obviously. And so now afterwards, you could ask me, and then I would be maybe saying, yeah, I think I looked at the pictures and I read the text. But without the eye tracking, I myself don't really know if it's true, and you obviously would also be not sure if I actually read all of this text. And this is how we then help our clients to optimize things and say like, yeah, maybe a little bit shorter, or maybe a little bit some highlight words, and header 1, 2, 3, and like these guidelines then help to optimize products and information processing. This is how we like to use eye tracking. And what your product also helps us a lot with is that like once a person has installed it and we have actually recorded data, we can go back in time. So client says like, did they actually see this button? Do you know? And then we can still say, because we have recorded the data, you can say, okay, let's check, right? We'll have the data for a long time. And so we can actually answer a lot of detailed questions. And maybe we can go a little bit into the demo and then in the Q&A. What do you think? So I don't know if the participants, did you already find Oculate in the app or in the Play Store? I just went to the Play Store and actually installed it, and now open it. And now if I continue, Oculate will ask, have access for the camera, and I would allow, and the microphone, and it would also ask for, to record my screen. And this is where it will get a little bit tricky, since I'm already sharing my screen via TeamViewer now. And then we come to the code. So each study, we have a specific code. I can enter manually, or I can actually do the QR code.
Yeah,
and I've never done that actually.
You haven't? Oh, that's the easier
I've always gotten the email with the link that I click.
Okay, shall I show that maybe briefly?
Cool. Yeah, I'll stop my sharing.
Just to foster the understanding, maybe. So just a second, I'm going.
No problem. So the process is like this. You can either send a link via email, share the QR code. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to even go one step before that, and to briefly just show that like Oculate and the data collection is taking place on the smartphone with a dedicated app for the recording. But as a researcher, you of course have to design the test first. And for that, we have a platform which actually helps you to create a test. I don't want to go into details here, because I mean, if you do that, you will have to look it up again, but it's fairly easy. So you give the test a name, you specify your email address for questions for the participants, and then like most of the instructions for the participants are already provided in the platform, like a little intro. And what you don't see here is that it will automatically also include information on the calibration and like the setting up of the eye tracking for the individual participant. You can in the platform then define micro survey questions, for example, like what people's names, what people's gender is, where they come from, such questions. And you can, or you have to specify the tasks that they should be working on, as for example, please browse through the following website and pick a t-shirt that you like, or please look at the following image it'll disappear by itself after 5 seconds or something like that, depending like on what kind of question you want to ask people and what you want data about. So you can specify that here pretty easily. Just type it in, and then you can save the test. I think it's not happy with me now because I haven't typed anything, but I don't think it's very like very interesting to do that like in a group.
And it's really straightforward too, like no need for any introduction. Everybody can do it.
And we have a manual for that, of course. And if you are within the EU, we also provide you with an option to upload a privacy notice and a consent for the participants, because of course we are collecting like personal data with a question, for example, of gender, and when people browse through the internet, that might contain personal information as well. So we provide you with that option to do that in a legally safe way, so to say. And if you have done that and set up tests, you have them here in an overview. And I just wanted to show you one test that we've done recently, which was about chips packages. Then we have per test here the data of, in this case, 40 participants. There's some quant data, as for example, if you ask people about their gender, you can see the data here, where they come from and all that, duration of how long they took for the test. But of course, the more interesting is the eye tracking data, and you can go through the individual recordings here. You can have a look at the tabs that people do and the eye tracking with different visualizations. And then just click somewhere in the middle of the recording and have a look at it.
And that's what we'd like specifically, that you can actually see the accuracy of your own recording, and you can see the little tabs and can decide if the heat map or porthole or gaze points is what you like as a visualization. And I think you have to press play, but you did already. No, maybe there was a...
Yeah, I think it didn't. It just didn't
load
because I'm...
Anyway, the ability to check the accuracy and to actually see it live helps us a lot to do quality management, also to give this to the clients as like the raw data in a way, right? That's really cool. And we also did in the beginning the quality test, like showing calibration fields. Like you always have to do a calibration anyway with eye tracking. So people, before you start, or also before you will try now in a minute, you have to look at some points so the camera learns how your eyes look like if they go left, up and down and so on. And this way you can also kind of reproduce and see how the accuracy is. And of course there will be, in our experience, like 1 or 2 people, like if you go for 10 people, 1 or 2 of these will maybe not have good eye tracking. With eye tracking, even in the lab, we'll never get 100%. So that's something we have to always consider. And the video and the task is still good, of course, because the respondents don't really notice if their eye tracking is good or not, and we don't want to disturb them with any alarms in between. And so let's see. I mean, we saw a replay before, I guess, Antje, so that's...
Yeah, I have to admit, I think my laptop is running a bit hot here. So I suggest I present the code.
I have one open as well.
If you have one open, we can watch that in a minute. But I just want to give everybody who would like to try it out themselves, if you have downloaded the app, you can use that scanning function that Philip just mentioned and hadn't tried before. So if you open the app and you come to that section where you can enter a code, you can also scan a QR code. So if you scan this one, you could open our study about different chips packages and run that for yourself.
Okay, so now it entered the long code for me in your app when I scanned it, and we can also later on maybe share the code with the participants,
Yes,
so you can
definitely.
still do that. And now it takes me through the process of, yeah, welcome, you're in the Oculate app. I will accept, and then it will now explain. I have the questionnaire. So say my age group and my country, and then the positioning starts.
Right, there's one positioning at the beginning of the trial. So before we record any data, and then there won't be any more positioning, as Philip just said. You can also like move a little bit. Of course, I mean, if you're on a shaking bus and your phone moves like that, there is a limit to it, but you don't have to like stay in exactly the same position. The natural interaction with the phone is possible. So that's one of the main advantages. And as Philip said, I can share the code later also, because the
when you do this, you're kind of also distracted. So I just did the calibration, followed the point. Now the quality check is being done. So if my calibration worked, and because I think I was sitting in the sun in the beginning and then moved back, it said, oops, calibration wasn't successful. And it kind of directs me, not too much direct sunlight. So in this case, I know what I have to do better. And also don't change your position too much. So not like from this to this. And then
particularly during the calibration, please don't go crazy.
I would do that again. And maybe it's a good idea to share this with the participants. And since so QR code worked for me, thanks Anna and Sharon. There were some questions as well. What do you think, Antje? Should we go and jump into the questions and let the people try it out later? And of course, you can always reach out anyway to Antje and me later on when you say like, okay, actually, I would like to give this a try for your UX studies. And then let me read one or two of the questions.
Maybe just briefly, the QR code is important, because if you don't have a study set up yourself, you can't do anything with the app. I mean, everybody can always download the app, but you need a study to participate in so that you can actually try it. But you can also like contact us later regarding a trial account,
and of course,
to set up your own study.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention too. So the trial account is great. Like we also like to try out and maybe send a little demo to our clients, but generally, of course, it does cost because the videos are uploaded, processed on the server, and the infrastructure and the Oculate service is great. And there's like a price per minute model. You can also find it on the website of Oculate, so that's all easy to understand. So now we have some more specific questions, and also the background parts of Lucas, who's doing a UX bootcamp and visual note-taking. And so that's interesting. Julia, she's also a psychologist and did her PhD in oculomotor research using eye tracking, actually. So, so that's also interesting. So she's happy to hear about this. Anna, she's a UX researcher, does a lot of remote testing, and is also wondering quite some time whether it would be possible to do eye tracking in these remote sessions. Actually, a challenge we all kind of struggle with. This is a remote testing tool, yes, but it's not a moderated tool. So basically, when the phone is doing eye tracking, you cannot be on a Zoom call like we are right now. The data will be uploaded very fast. So we could be on a Zoom call, let's say, here, I could do an eye tracking here, and after a second or a minute, you could have a look at it and actually speak with me about it, but we cannot do it all simultaneously on the same device because the camera is being used obviously by one tool, and so it is a unmoderated tool, if that's the correct word. And you can collect data internationally, globally with Oculate and look at the recordings later. And of course you could contact the people again, but normally it's not like synchron and like in
synchronized. Yeah.
same time.
It's actually like we have had some customers who have run Zoom in parallel on the laptop. We don't generally recommend it because people don't really like to be watched when they do the calibration, and it is when they look up during the important part of the process to talk to the experimenter, it usually doesn't help. So we are more fond of, you can have integrations with different other platforms, and if you have people coming in via a panel, for example, we can process and tag the panel ID, so you can recontact people and do, for example, retrospective thinking aloud with them. But we wouldn't like recommend. You can do it in studio, of course.
Yeah, we did it in studios as well. Like if sending eye trackers to a studio in a foreign country would be even more of a hassle. But yeah, I mean, from the theory part, like the RTA, the retrospective thinking aloud, actually recording and afterwards speaking with the respondent about what they thought and did. I like the method, it's cool. But doing everything at the same time, like interviewing and doing eye tracking, is not really recommended by us as well, because eye tracking is just so sensitive and so easy to influence. And as soon as I talk, I'll just look at random places or look somewhere really long. And so we try and recommend to separate eye tracking from people vocalizing and thinking. And there's another question from Sharon to the market research. An agency and finding out smartphone eye tracking would have any added value for us. Yeah, so in that part, I would say definitely does have an added value, not only because it produces pretty pictures and it also sells good to the clients, but it adds a crucial and very important part to any research where visual stimuli, information processing in early or also in later stages come in, because especially these early processes cannot be gotten out of any other process. And you can watch where people click, and the clients have a lot of data where people click, but finding out why they click somewhere and what's visually demanding is only possible to get with eye tracking. But the question can be very different from ad research to package design or to like UX parts, like if I navigate through a shop. So the areas of eye tracking are so versatile that it's always difficult to say, yeah, you should use it in this way or that way. And
for qual research, I think one of the main advantages is that you can really foster like customer empathy. Like you have that feeling of, really looking through the customer's eyes. I have, for example, recently analyzed a test, an app test, where we have run eye tracking, and then for one participant, I don't know what the person was doing or if they were doing anything in particular different, but we didn't have eye tracking recording for like 30 seconds in between, and it really felt differently. Like I felt when analyzing the journey, I felt a bit lost because I wasn't really sure what was the center of the attention.
Definitely. And the amount of information, even on these small screens, I mean, we have high resolution screens. I think my phone has a much higher resolution than the screen I'm looking at right now, is crazy. Like I've just looked at an app a client recorded, and I think I might as well show it. And the amount of information, of course, now I'm in here on the screen that the respondents have to process while entering an app for the first time is quite a lot. And showing this to the client and visualizing it to the developers really helps that they think like, okay, maybe it's just too much information in the first screen. Like maybe we should, do the onboarding a little bit easier. And these videos help a lot. You can also turn the camera, the audio on, right, Antje?
Yeah, you can turn the audio on.
I don't understand this or this. This also helps. And then we have the chance of doing websites or apps. Normally websites is what we recommend for the beginning. And then also Oculate helps to analyze these data and the AOIs come in. AOIs stand for areas of interest that we kind of draw little boxes on the screen and say, okay, how many people actually looked at something, or for how long, or how often. These are the typical eye tracking metrics. And Sharon asked how small these could be. And normally we would not recommend to make them much smaller than like 2 or 3, like in a row, like if you imagine to segmenting a phone screen. But in your paper, you will go into more detail as well, Antje, right? The paper you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah, the white paper, we go into a little more detail about that. So if I'm not mistaken, it's something like 85% of fixations fall within a range of 2 centimeters around the X and Y coordinates that you want to track. So of course, it's up to yourself how to define the areas of interest, but I wouldn't make them any smaller than 3 by 3 centimeters or something like that. And then you 2.5 by 2.5, so something in that vicinity. It to me it's become sort of gut feeling what works well, but it is around that area, I'd say. So if you it's no use like having a look at a little burger item symbol, I wouldn't say. But when it's about like shopping carts that are usually quite a bit bigger these days, that works well.
Maybe I'll just share the dashboard from my side, and then we can also get to the last question from Anna. Do you have any best practices to share regarding eye tracking remote sessions? Anything you need to pay special attention to as researchers? And yeah, it depends a bit on, of course, the research question. Let's say, imagine you're a UX researcher, Anna, and actually want to do the remote sessions. They're unmoderated, so basically you'll give respondents a task. Like imagine you started Google, or imagine you want to buy something, and for this task we'll record the eye tracking, and the task should be as natural and realistic, I guess, as possible, because it will direct where people will look at, obviously. And then we tend to do a couple of tasks, and in between we ask people something again, and we try not to prime them too much on what we actually want to find out, but of course also want to be honest to them what the reason is why we do something. And I'm just going to show you one example of an app actually that we looked at. So now you see the screen. I'm going to turn on the eye tracking. I can choose between these visualizations, and I like the heat map, and then I can just click on start. So I see the recording of this participant. I don't know who this was. I just know they had a Samsung phone. And now I can jump here, and I can see the eye tracking, jumping around, orientating, and the video is quite long. So this is 11 minutes, and I actually wanted to look at participant 3, and this is how I can get a feeling of the data of the participants. And so these videos are actually the basis of what we analyze. And if we want to go then into more detail, we take screenshots of these important parts of a website, for example, and then actually go into the aggregation where we put all of the data on top of each other. Did that, I hope, help to explain? And Anna, you turned on your camera, thanks. So if you have the question, or if you want to specify the question, we'll be also happy.
Yeah, it was really more about like the logistics of the test, or setting up the test and test instructions, like what are common pitfalls, maybe things that don't work, how can you avoid them, how do I make sure the test works well and gives the results I'm looking for.
So I think one important factor is how you recruit. We have a lot of customers who recruit via panels, and then I think it's important to give people as much information as you can beforehand, in the sense that what is going to be done, like that you record eye tracking data and screen recordings, because otherwise you will have to deal with quite a bit of dropout when people are taken by surprise in the app. I think that's usually not a good idea, to just inform them in the app about what's going to happen. And we also have a set of guidelines on that, indeed, in a little leaflet where it's explained what you should tell participants beforehand. And I think what's also important is to have, it sounds silly, but it is important to have a question that is really suitable to the visual perception thing. Like eye tracking doesn't always deliver great results. It delivers great results when you have a question that focuses on attention and that is formulated as precisely as possible.
Yeah, we also forget when we do the research, it's ideal to have an hypothesis in a way, like with any research question. And in that way, a hypothesis could be, like for us, the easiest way to compare something is actually A/B. So we have two versions, clear question like, okay, how fast maybe can somebody find something, or which version finds better. And then eye tracking is a real clear method, a very objective and valid. And that's like the ideal experiment in a way for us psychologists sometimes. But if it's qualitative, our interviewers, for example, they really, and the analysts, like Antje said, like actually watching the videos, something you get used to because it delivers a lot of insights, and you can then formulate more hypotheses and actually either ask people again in the next round or also go into more detail, just because it's just a whole another dimension of information that we're missing otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
the task instructions is definitely not that easy. And what Antje said, like formulating these questions, like what we like to do in the first task, like let's say on the homepage, say like, okay, just have a look. And like as you normally would, and we don't give a concrete instruction yet, because then we would really say like they would all go to the menu or to the footer, and so like just have a look without going anywhere, just stay on this page. And then we'll just look at the first 10 seconds to see how, like what draws attention. And then in the next task, we go into more detail. And then the respondents will learn how to navigate on the sites anyway. And after 5 minutes, they're experts for this page. And we really cannot really ask them again. If we invite them again, they already know where everything is. So in the next round or next iteration, we would actually invite 10 new people or compare the new ones to the existing ones. And yeah, the instruction is very tricky since it will produce a different heat map. If I ask you to find a phone number or to look for Antje on the Oculate App webpage, then of course I'll get a different attention heat map then. But I just said like, look for what you like, what's interesting for you. And so that's always something we're also struggling with, to identifying the best use cases for the client. And if we have identified them, we'll also try to standardize them in a way that we can reproduce it and say, okay, in the next test, we'll kind of do these tasks again. Okay, so thank you very much. And
maybe I think we skipped one question.
Yeah, let's see. The best practice.
Sharon also asked about the numbers in the loss rate. And I would say that depends partly on the reward that you offer people, in particular when you recruit via a panel. So I think, Philip, you guys usually exclude about 10-15% of the participants. Is that correct? Based on eye tracking quality?
Yeah, it really depends on where do we recruit the people. Like some people are highly engaged, right? And so, but turning on the camera is a especially for these very, very big panels, you know, where there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, they don't read the text maybe, and then they realize, okay, I have to turn on my camera, and then they drop out, but they kind of drop out before they even come into our study. So it really depends on the questionnaire. Once they're in the study, the dropout rate is about like what you said, like 10 to 15%. I think that's realistic. The quality, that's really good with you guys from Oculid. Like, we don't have to exclude people that much about the quality. There might be people with glasses or something where it's difficult. They can still go through the test, and later on we could still say like, no, okay, let's not include this person. Still had to pay them, obviously, but yeah. And Sharon, did you have another question? Okay, that's fine. Well, thanks for participating and asking. And then I think we have kept you long enough as well. Antje, thank you so much for your time. And what we'll do is write a little summary with the links, the contacts data. We'll send it through meetup.com to all the participants. And so you have the chance to reach out to Antje directly, also like to a full service provider like iSquare. We could also offer the full service of using Oculate, but trying it out yourself is definitely recommended. And then, oh yeah, there was the last question, or maybe, no, I think we already answered that one, right? How many
participants?
Yeah, that's always the.
Philip, can I ask one question?
Yes, Tsunetomi-san.
Yep. Maybe for the German people, it's this research is a one-stop service, but I'm Japanese, so and it's separated eye tracking part and question part. It's possible
to separate it.
Yes. So I want to use a local panel in local for the local peoples to test it.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we can after the research, I would like to match the IDs. With combined to the questionnaire and tracking details.
Yeah, it's a good point, and of course a professional question. And yes, we did this with Oculate as well. So using our questionnaire tool, I don't know, Confirm It or Tivian or Questback or any of these, SurveyMonkey, and jumping into the Oculate app. Actually, app is installed. The ID is handed over to the app automatically. This works well in Chrome, definitely the best. And then afterwards, you jump again to the questionnaire. And so our questionnaire is our tool, and Oculate records their data, and later on we can match it. Yes. So that's a yes, it works. And so it's both this is very quantitative setup for us. The qualitative setup is easier with the demo, like we just explained. Yeah, let's try that. Let's try that in Japan then.
So
okay, you mean it's possible?
Yeah, it's possible. Like the panel ID will appear in our platform as a second ID, and then you can match the panel IDs. They can just be like transferred between the platforms, but we can talk about that one-on-one as well in detail.
Sorry, one more, and maybe for this research, the respondents should download the app. But after the finishing research testing, and it's possible to delete. Maybe some of them is really has a concern about the privacy things.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that is an advantage of the app, that you can just delete it straight away. It won't ever record any data unless you are in a specific test anyways, but when you are suspicious about it, you can delete it without any further consequences.
Okay.
We would also like to delete it automatically, but of course Android and iOS don't like that somebody is able to delete an app. But we tell the people as well, now please delete. Data is uploaded, so we don't need the app. I delete it myself because sometimes I feel like it's already older, and then I want to go also through the process again of feeling like I'm a new installer, and so it's very easy, and it's a small app. And the question with the qual and quant sample, it's always a tricky one. So we recommend, like for any UX research, to have like a sample of 5 people, like to start with, and then maybe adding 2 for safety. So if you have a little bit of a like a safety buffer. But there's of course books about sample sizes. So for UX, we say like, okay, there's 2 settings. One is you want to identify problems in your prototype still. So you're at a very early stage. Small sample of 5 is fine, because the probability of finding errors is still very high. If you're testing a product that's at the market, so basically all of the flaws and problems have already been ruled out by many tests, then you're in the benchmarking on the marketing world more. And there we actually talk about 30, 40, 50, or even 100 respondents. Either to find more problems, you need this high sample size. It's a binomial like logic of finding like problems, but also to get a data that is much more suitable to talk about the whole population, obviously. So a lot of our clients say like, we don't do tests under 100 respondents, but of course in the UX world, 5 is totally fine.
Yeah, I would generally say, right, what you are writing, Anna, that it's not so super different from other studies that you do in quant or qual. You have the same like statistical guidelines to it, and yeah, when you do qual just with a very small population, I just add like a couple with a very small sample, like
6 or 10,
just to be sure.
Yeah.
That it hasn't.
And if the population or the interests group is very specific as well, then it's of course easier to do a small sample. If it's a very difficult set of people, then yeah, we also tend to say like, okay, then we need 5 of these and maybe 5 of these, or just 3 of these and 3 of these. And aggregating eye tracking is of course always a bit of a challenge. And I know Oculid is working hard on it to make this easier and easier, and you're adding so many features. So by the time you have probably installed it, there will be another feature of especially analysis.
Sorry, a lot of questions. This is last ones, and this problem is a very special, typical for the Japanese humans. And your application is just only recorded some text data, not videos. Because
video screen, screen, yes.
Especially, yeah, young woman is very sensitive to, afraid they take pictures in your face.
Yes.
Especially naked face, so that sometimes young woman's entry is credit drop rate is really high.
I understand. Yeah, it's a problem for us in Europe too. The face and the eyes are, of course, very sensitive and personal information. And what we also make sure when we talk on the data privacy side, and we have to assess Oculate as well, that the data of the camera, the selfie camera, is not stored and it's never handed to anyone. We cannot see it as researchers. I don't want to see it, but we have to make sure the data, it is uploaded. I understand this, and we need to know where it is, for how long, and when it's deleted. And that Antje can explain that better.
Yeah, to be clear, it is stored for a brief period of time because we extract from the face images the eye tracking data. So it is stored briefly so that we can ensure that that was done rightly, the extraction of the eye tracking data, also in case there would be a dispute with the customer about the data quality. We would have that as a backup for like 3 weeks, but then we delete it and it's never accessible to the customers. Okay. So it's just on our secured servers, and we also the analysis is done automatically.
Yeah.
And it's just a backup there for legal disputes, and then fairly soon deleted as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks to me for the questions. I think we'll have to close now anyway, but we'll do another session, especially with the Japanese market then, Tsunetomi. And if I don't see you, I wish you a great trip back to Tokyo. And I want to thank Antje definitely for all of your time. And then we'll stop the recording now. And thank you for your participation.
Yes, thanks everybody for participating. And